Hi everyone, I'm Sophie. I work for Star Academies, a multi-academy trust with schools across the country. I'm not a teacher, but I'm privileged to work with teachers and school leaders as part of my job. As a mum, I found there have been highs and lows of lockdown and home learning, and I think we've all got a newfound or even deeper appreciation of teachers and schools. Throughout the last term, we've run a home learning advice line for parents, StarLive, and alongside this, a weekly broadcast with a range of experts sharing their ideas to help you keep your kids learning and happy. This week, we're joined again by head teachers and leaders from secondary schools across the country. We've invited a range of guests to share their guidance for parents to make sure that we can provide accurate and useful information. We're asking them some of the questions we know parents and carers have about GCSEs and how to prepare teenagers to receive results they didn't sit exams for. To start with, I'm going to ask Carl Jackson, who leads on assessment for Star Academies, to explain how results will be determined this year by Ofqual, the organisation responsible for the process of awarding grades. Carl, can you tell us a bit about how this process will work?
Sophie, that's a really good question. As exams didn't take place this summer, pupils are going to be awarded calculated grades, and Ofqual and examples have worked together to make sure the grades will be as fair as possible. I'm sure what parents will want to know is that how this will work and to make sure it's going to be fair and to make sure that no one's going to be disadvantaged and we can go to college or employment and take the next steps as appropriate. So the calculated grades are going to be based on teacher predictions, and they've been called centre assessed grades. So teachers have a big role to play in this because they know each of the students the best. So they've been asked to make sure they give a predicted grade, a centre assessed grade, and also to rank the pupils in order from highest to lowest for each of their individual subjects. And that's really important part of the process. So teachers have been using a range of information to help determine the grades they're going to give and put forward. Those include mock exams, coursework, classwork and homework. And most importantly, they're going to use their own relationships and knowledge of each individual pupil, because that's something that isn't recorded just through statistics. Where possible, at least 2 teachers from every subject are going to produce the centre assessed grades. In some subjects, perhaps things like music, there may only be 1 teacher in each school to do that. So the head teacher will get involved and make sure that the evidence used is fair and giving the best grades possible for each of the students. For every school, the head teachers will review every student's grade in every subject. That's to make sure it's fair, to make sure that things have been done properly and that everyone gets the grades they deserve. Once schools have put all that hard work in to make sure that it's right, the exam boards are going to standardise the grades to make sure it's fair. This is because some schools may be a little bit more generous than others, and some schools may be grading in a way that's a tiny bit on the harsh side. So it wouldn't be fair for any student to be advantaged or disadvantaged because of this. So the exam boards are basing their next piece of work on trying to make things fair for everyone. Now, they're using a sophisticated statistical calculation to make sure this is done fairly. So in some cases, grades may actually go up, and in some cases, grades may go down. What exam boards won't do is they won't alter the ranking of any of the students, and that's because the people who know each of your sons and daughters best are the teachers. So the teachers' ranking won't be altered by the exam boards. That way, what we're going to have is a balance between the teachers who know your sons and daughters really well and the exam boards making sure it's all done fairly across the country. We do know as well, or indications have been told to us from Ofqual, that grades will perhaps be slightly better than exams from last year. Perhaps a 1% increase in GCSE grades and 2% at A-level. So what that does mean is we should be reassured that the pupils who put in such hard work throughout their courses will get the grades that they deserve. We also know, because the grades will be similar to last year, and indeed to next year, that means that students who've had their exam results this year won't be at an advantage or disadvantage to students in the past or in the future. It needs to be fair for everyone.
Thanks, Carl. I think that provides a really useful backdrop for the questions parents are asking about preparing their children for the difference in exam results this year. So I've asked Janetta Liebert, Vice Principal at Nine Styles Academy, part of the Summit Learning Trust in Birmingham, to share her thoughts on that question. Over to you, Janetta.
I think it's clear that many children during this time will feel quite anxious about those results. And if we allowed them to, they'd spend much of their time being consumed with the thoughts of what grades they will get, whether they'll be good or bad. And you know, human nature is such that most people tend to look at the negative side, and they'd be, you know, possibly spending too much time being anxious about grades that are bad in their mind. I think one of the things that parents can do, and it's really important, is to talk them through the possibilities, to talk them through the scenario of them receiving excellent grades, the grades that they want to achieve, to talk them through the scenario of them perhaps not receiving the grades that they anticipated. Parents need to give their child you know, a plan A, a plan B, and plan C that they have talked about extensively, so that when the results do come, they're not surprised. I think it's really important that parents point out that there are several professionals and celebrities who we know of who did not perform particularly well academically, and it was through perseverance and following you know, alternative routes that they were actually able in the end to receive fantastic results. My mind goes back to people like David Attenborough, for example, Richard Branson, many professionals in you know, that are doctors today, perhaps didn't do so well at school, but they persevered and continued, and they were able to get to the goal that they had anticipated in the end.
Thanks, Janetta. I think it will be really helpful for parents and carers to support their young people to make plans for different scenarios, so they feel secure whatever happens when the results arrive. We've invited Nicola Palmer from Hindburn Academy, a United Learning Trust school in Lancashire, to answer our next question about what to do if the nationally awarded grades are different to the centre-assessed grades produced by schools. Nicola, how can parents help their children to make sense of this difference?
I think there are two parts to this. If the centre assessed grades are different from the national grades, I think if the national grades are better than the centre assessed grades, then I think the question is done. If I think that the centre assessed grades are stronger than the national set of grades they receive, I think we come back to the notion that the centre assessed grades are an assessment of the child through what they've done in the whole of their GCSE or BTEC studies, and the school to that point have made an assessment on what they think or thought they might get. However, during exam season and the revision programmes and how children actually execute their papers on the day is an unknown to everybody, including the exam boards. So I think in preparation, even before any of those grades come through to parents, certainly the national set, they need to sit and have that conversation that everybody's working on a slight unknown because nobody knows exactly what might have happened on the day. If those centre assessed grades, if the parent makes a request and they want those centre assessed grades or want to have sight of them, then they need to sit with the child and actually sit and have a conversation about how those grades came to be and how the national grades are a reflection of whatever has happened nationally in each subject, so that again parents are confident and reduce the child's anxiety as to where those grades have come from.
Thanks, Nicola. I think it's useful to understand why there might be that difference and for parents to think about how to talk to their children to make sure they understand. Lastly, we wanted to ask a question about post-16 provision. We've asked both Nicola and Carl to share their thoughts about what parents can do to help ensure their child gets the post-16 provision they were hoping for.
I think the first thing parents all children need to do is to contact the post-16 providers that they've applied for a place at, to see what those colleges and sixth forms, etc., or how they are going to calculate the giving of places when the final sets of results come through in August. It's really important that you engage with the post-16 providers, because depending on how the results look on August the 20th, even if we weren't in this situation with the pandemic, it's always good to have a dialogue just in case results come through that aren't what children expected. If you then know exactly what the post-16 provision are doing, or what they are going to accept, and what I mean by that is some post-16 providers might say, okay, that's your national set of results. Let's have a look at your centre assessed grades, because let's look at what the school thought you might get. And that will give them an idea, hopefully, on what the child has been doing before the exam, so how they've worked through Key Stage 4. Because lots of post-16 providers look beyond just result sets. They want to know about attitude, motivation, and what's led the child to actually pick the course in the first place. I think when you then know what the post-16 provision want or are looking for, it then allows you to have a really good conversation before results day about the what ifs, so that you're then ready on that day, as soon as you either collect your results or receive them in the post, or however the school is issuing them, that you then have a chance to sit down, get in touch with the providers, hopefully accept the place, but if not, you can then get into some form of discussion. And by all means, ask your schools to help you. They will already have people that work very closely with the colleges who are in charge of information, advice and guidance. So ask for school support if you need to have a conversation with the post-16 provider, so that they get a true understanding about your child, so they can lift the results off the paper and actually talk about the person that's behind them. I think that's the most important thing.
Finally, it's really important to remember that pupils can always take their exams in the autumn if they weren't as expected. While there will be revision for students to do this, pupils won't have to redo any coursework, and the best grade would count, which means that students should still get every opportunity to go forward to pursue their next stages at college or university.
Thanks to all our guests this week for sharing their insight into the different process for determining exam results this year, and what parents can do to take away some of the stress or worry of this situation. We'll include some links to other resources you might find helpful beneath this video. Now that it's the summer holiday, you can still contact Starline on Facebook and visit our website, where there are lots of useful blogs and all of our previous StarLive episodes, but the phone line is now closed. We're really pleased to have been a part of the response to the pandemic and have felt privileged to support so many parents and carers at this challenging time. We're pleased to be welcoming Julie Swan next week from Ofqual to our final episode of StarLive. She will be sharing information about the process they've undertaken to ensure results are fair and consistent in these unusual times. We look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, stay safe.